Fortnite Reload has had a long history of weird and random things happening, as well as some very odd updates. For example, did you know that at one point, Fortnite was actually going to add augments to Reload? So today, I compiled a list of 15 of the weirdest updates ever in Reload. To start off here, back during the Squid Grounds map, around a month after it launched, Fortnite did this event in Reload called the Weekend of Champions. How it worked is that every single game you played, all of the chests in that match would have a 100% spawn chance, but that's not all, because they also changed the entire loot pool for a pretty mid one. Now you may remember that, but do you remember the one exotic they added, which was only in Reload for 3 days, then got vaulted, and to this day it's never returned? That's right, because the exotic 6-shooter was randomly added to Reload during this Weekend of Champions, and honestly, I probably could not even prove it to you if it wasn't for the sole clip we have of someone finding it. I don't know why Fortnite randomly added that exotic, but I guarantee none of you remember number 3, because Fortnite Reload has actually had a Marvel-themed update before, and the reason for this is because back during Chapter 5 Season 4, obviously that was the Marvel-themed season, but for some reason, they also added the Stark Industries rifle into Reload. Now, it wasn't hitscan, which makes it one of the only non-hitscan ARs to ever come into Reload, but other than that, it fully worked and everything. Hopefully we can see this gun in a Marvel-themed Reload map in the future, but what about when we used to get surveys on potential future Reload updates? You see, back in 2024 and even early 2025, Fortnite used to send out surveys about Reload. These surveys were really interesting too because they asked a lot of crazy questions. For example, this survey right here asks about exclusive Reload weapons made for competitive, which eventually came true with the Morphites. But not just that, because apparently Fortnite was thinking to add the Storm Tower and potentially even bunkers to Reload, or even augments, as well as like Reload exclusive exotics. Honestly, I hope that we can see some of these in the future. But something I wish would happen again is number 5. You see, back in the Chapter 2 Remix season, during one singular tournament, there was a super rare and exclusive glitch where the actual Battle Royale map literally combined with the Oasis Reload map. It made for an absolutely ridiculous looking map, which honestly, I wish I played it. Imagine using Reload mythics and exotics on the Battle Royale map. Epic ended up quickly removing that, just like how they did with number 6, drivable cars? Yes, you used to actually be able to drive cars in Reload, and this was because back in April of 2025, when the Slurp Rush map first released, there was actually a super rare chance that you could find a car which was unclamped and had nothing keeping it from moving. This made for some insane games where cars really just dominated the end games, and with the Simpsons map returning in just a few days to Reload and cars potentially being added, we may actually get to experience this one again. Now, speaking of things which changed up gameplay a ton, we have to talk about when Reload got an entirely Star Wars themed loot pool. So back when the Star Wars Battle Royale season first released, they actually replaced the entire Battle Royale loot pool with Star Wars blasters. Now everything was going normally until people started to realize that the entire Reload loot pool was also the same thing with only Star Wars weapons, and basically you could use all sorts of weapons in Reload like Star Wars shotguns and Star Wars ARs and SMGs, and even though this glitch was only in the game for around an hour, it had people crashing out. Something that had me crashing out though is number 8. You see, back in early 2025, many people were wondering what the next Reload map was going to be. We had just gotten Oasis, and at that point, both of the maps we had were really solid, but that's when we start to get leaks about the next Reload map being themed around Chapter 2 Season 2. This map was set to feature classical locations like the Agency and the Grotto, as well as the Shark and other Season 2 locations, but unfortunately, it is believed that Fortnite actually scrapped this map for the Slurp Rush map. Hopefully one day Epic goes back to making a map like that, but something I hope never returns is what happened back in February. You see, Epic planned to bring back Nightmare Island for a weekend, starting with Friday the 13th, and most players were really excited, including myself. Now, it got even better when players loaded in and saw that every game was a Legendary Royale, as well as the loot pool being updated with super OP weapons. Now, everything was going fine until Fortnite randomly vaulted the Legendary Royales. So now every game was back to normal and pretty much no one had a clue about what was going on, but it didn't end there because Fortnite also reverted the entire loophole update. Apparently this was because it was messing with the tournament that was scheduled to happen later in the day, but the disappointments that month did not end there because Fortnite was also teasing that Reload was gonna get, you know, a Lantern Fest themed update a week later, and pretty much everyone assumed it was a brand new map because there were some buildings behind the teaser we got for it, but the time came around and all we got was just a super glitched Teams of 8 game mode. The photo behind the teaser ended up just being a creative map, so I genuinely do not understand why they baited the community like that, but what about when they straight up vaulted Reload from the game? Surprisingly, this actually happened very recently because back in December, following the 0-hour live event, the Dark Voyager actually destroyed the battle bus, and because of this, we could not play Reload for a few days until December 4th. Honestly, those days waiting for Reload to return were so boring, but that's not the only thing that was boring because a month before that in November, Fortnite officially announced that Reload was gonna get 3 modifiers. A steady storm themed modifier where the storm was constantly moving, a slurp rush modifier where the map was flooded a bit, and a floor is lava venture modifier where the map would slowly get vaulted by the lava. Now, when the time came around, you know, none of these modifiers ended up actually changing anything that much, to be honest. And even what was supposed to be the craziest one, which was Floor is Lava, took so long and it was very clunky. Hopefully the modifiers we get in the future can be a lot better, just like the only live event Reload ever had. Back in April, the Dark Voyager had just rifted into the Elite Stronghold map, and he was actually trying to steal the 0-point shard that Elites had taken control of. He ended up being successful, and that's because of the whack ad defense of the Elites. I mean, just take a look at this. Yeah, they really thought just shooting him with some weak turrets was gonna work, and honestly for a live event, I mean, this wasn't really anything crazy. But what was not just crazy, but insane is when Fortnite accidentally added an unreleased mythic to Reload. Back in February, Fortnite was actually updating Reload pretty consistently when it came to rare loot. Like every single update there was new rare items, but in the first update of the month, Fortnite may have gone a little too crazy because they added something called Totally Peter's Ranger Pistol. You may think this was like Peterbot's weapon or something, but it was actually made for the Peter Griffin boss back in Chapter 5, Season 1. You see, instead of dropping the hammer pump, he was actually supposed to drop this pistol instead, and honestly, I wish they did not remove this weapon from Reload because it was gonna be extremely OP. Now, something that wasn't necessarily OP but confusing is when Fortnite added storm shapes into Reload. The first time they did this was during the Nightmare Island weekend when it returned. During that time, the storm had taken on a heart shape, and since it was the first time having storm shapes, it was pretty cool. What was even crazier though is when storm shapes returned for the second time right at the start of Chapter 7 Season 2. This time, there was a small but possible chance you would get a shape which was a crown themed around the Ice King, but the reason as to why this was so boring is because it would literally just make your Reload matches last as long as a Battle Royale game. This led to matches being dragged out and becoming very boring since everyone was just camping, but those were 15 of Reload's craziest updates.